Hello, friends. We are going to be starting off with hopefully your new favorite habitat song before we get into part two of the deciduous temperate forest. Take a listen, read along.
I am an explorer of this beautiful earth, from the jungle to the polar caps. There are so many different homes for living things, and we call them habitats. The forest is made up of trees and animals. Oxygen and water are the norm. Temperate means it goes through different seasons, and tropical means it's very wet and warm. A forest is a home for living things, and it's one of the habitats. Grasslands can have many titles: pampas, prairies, savannas, or steppes. And just like forests, they can be tropical or temperate. A grassland is a home for living things, and it's one of the habitats. Fresh water can be a marsh or river, a wetland, a swamp, or a lake. And fresh water can be ideal for insects, for beavers, and snakes. Fresh water is a home for living things, and it's one of the habitats. The poles include the Arctic and Antarctic. Both are very dry and cold, and animals need blubber or hibernation if they want to live around the poles. A polar biome is a home for living things, and it's one of the habitats. A desert's dry and doesn't have much water. Some species live by storing it inside. Some hide beneath the sand when it gets hotter, and come out in the open when it's night. A desert is a home for living things, and it's one of the habitats. The ocean is vast and it's all salt water, with jellyfish, whales, and sharks. From the coral reef in the shallow parts to the deep where it's always dark. The ocean is a home for living things. There are even more homes for living things. So many different homes for living things, and we call them habitats.
Perfect. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, or good afternoon, depending when you are seeing this. There you are. Hello. Well, we are going to start part two of the forest. So we left off with this yummy insect, and we talked about all the different things that we could find actually living in the forest. And we're going to talk about some plants now that we've talked about animals and insects. So I'm taking my camera away, but I'll be back. Oh, yum. This looks wonderful. It's definitely a berry bush. So, down on the forest floor, there are all kinds of shrubs, the fruits of which are food to many different species of animals, including rabbits, chipmunks, deer, and omnivores like bears. So, remember, a species is a group of living things that have similar characteristics, and the animals that you just heard listed, rabbits, chipmunks, deer, and bear, are all different species. They don't have a whole lot in common. And then you heard the word omnivore, that bears are omnivores. So let's remember, do omnivores eat just plants and grasses? just meat and other animals, or do they eat both? You're right. Bears eat both. Some of these delicious looking blueberries are perfectly ripe. What a tasty treat for animals and sometimes humans if you're like me. Down here on the ground, I can see wildflowers, grasses, and clover. These plants, which cover the forest floor, are home to many types of insects and are food to grazing animals such as deer and mice. One interesting thing about the plants in a forest is that often they grow leaning in the same direction. Isn't that strange? Why do you think they lean in the same direction? I heard some of you say the right answer. They have to do that because they're looking for sunlight. So they reach and reach and reach looking for sunlight. The leaves of the big trees get all the sun, and there's only a small amount of sunlight that gets through to the forest floor. And that's why it's so shady in here. The plants down here have to grow toward the sun so they can get enough light to make food that they need to survive. So, friends, when I was in Peru, at the same time that I had that picture taken of me and the monkey that's in the classroom, they have these trees in the Amazon forest called walking palms, like walking palm trees, and their roots are practically all above ground. And that's because in the Amazon rainforest, it's so thick that the animals struggle to fight for sunlight. Well, these palm trees have adapted, there's one of our words, they have adapted to living in such a thick rainforest that they actually walk, not like a human, but they will move. They will move toward areas over long periods of time that tend to have more sunlight. So their roots just kind of start moving and growing and pulling the tree toward the sunlight. And that's why they are called walking palms. But we're going to get to our rainforest next. But for now, let's go from berry bushes to moss. And we see moss like this all over our beautiful state. You may have seen this fuzzy green stuff growing on rocks, trees, and the ground in the forest or countryside. Mosses are small green plants that grow in clumps in damp and shaded places. They cover parts of the forest floor just like a carpet, and moss is home to many small animals and insects. It feels really soft to walk on, thick and spongy, and if you don't have your shoes on, it can even tickle a bit. Now we're going to take a look at some of the animals that live here. The Great Smoky Mountain National Park is home to almost 400 friends, 400 different kinds of animals. Animals that live in the temperate deciduous forest are adapted to living in a habitat with four seasons. So let's take a look at some of these forest friends that we have. So let's start with a mighty oak tree again. This amazing tree is home to many animals, and I'm standing at the nest of one of them, the gray squirrel. This little animal is covered in warm gray brown fur with a white chest and a long bushy tail. Squirrels live in holes in the trunks of trees or in nests high up in trees like this one. Their nests are built from twigs, leaves, moss, and grass. Squirrels use their strong back legs and sharp claws to help them leap from tree to tree and run up and down tree trunks. And they use their tails to help them balance. Oh, friends, does that remind you of the cougar that we studied and then the kangaroo that I referred to? Yeah. Squirrels are omnivores and spend most of their time looking for food. So remember, do omnivores eat just plants and grasses? Do they eat meat and other animals? Or do they eat both? You're right. Omnivores are animals that eat both plants and other animals. The squirrels eat mostly acorns from the oak tree. But they also eat mushrooms, nuts, berries, seeds, and even bird eggs and insects when they can find them. This squirrel might nibble on an acorn or two now, but it will also bury and store many acorns underground so it will have them in winter when other food is hard to find. So, friends, do you remember what I was saying happened to the nuts that squirrels forget where they buried? Boop, up pops a plant or maybe even a tree. You're right. All right. Here's an animal that we have around here too. Do any of you know what kind of owl this is? Close. Oh, there's Batman barking. It is a barred owl, and barred owls live in some oak trees. But I have to be careful because owls are carnivores. What's a carnivore? A carnivore is an animal that eats other animals, if you remember. So owls don't eat plants and grasses and berries, they eat other animals. And unlike that elf owl that we learned about that lives in the desert, this owl happens to enjoy eating rats. Oh, yeah, if you remember that little elf owl was smaller than I am, but this guy, he would eat me in a heartbeat. This owl also eats other small animals like mice, insects, and even other birds. Owls have very good hearing and excellent eyesight, which allow them to find their prey easily in the thick forest. Owls are nocturnal, and if you remember, friends, that means that they normally only come out at night. So I have some time before this one is ready for a late night snack. Okay, and here's our last animal. I think, nope, not quite our last one, but um, Moby and Annie saw the bears in the Brain Pop video. Hold on, what's that scratching sound coming from below? It's a black bear. Black bears are common in North American temperate deciduous forests, and there are more than 1,000 in this national park. They are large animals. They weigh almost as much as 14 first graders. That's a lot of kids. And when they stand on their hind legs, they can be taller than a person. Bears are omnivores and they hibernate during the winter in hollowed out trees or caves. When they are hibernating, bears use less energy and do not need to eat any food for many, many days. This is a good thing because during the winter, the foods that bears eat are scarce and very hard to find. Bears are covered in thick black or brown fur, and they have sharp claws to strip the bark off trees in order to uncover insects to eat. This bear will use its long, sticky tongue to get into every crack to hunt out insects, and they'll make a delicious meal for him, I'm sure. So, if you remember the stories about the chimpanzees, they like to eat ants with their trusty stick. Oh, and here's a buck. I just saw a deer through the trees. Deer often live in the temperate deciduous forest because it is such a good place to stay hidden. But they often hunt for food in neighboring meadows. This is a buck. A buck is a male deer, and we can tell because male deer have antlers. Did you know that a buck's antlers fall off every year and will grow back again? Bucks mark their territory by stripping the barks off trees with their antlers. And remember, a territory is an area in which an animal or group of animals live. And animals often protect their territory and try to keep other animals out. Bucks also use their antlers for fighting with other male deer. This deer is a white-tailed deer. Its coat is tan right now, but in the winter it will change to gray-brown and it has patches of white on its underside. This helps the deer to be camouflaged or hidden in the environment. How do you think the change in color from tan to gray brown with patches of white in winter will help to camouflage the deer. Will you take a second and think about that? How does it help the deer to camouflage itself? And tell someone who is near you. All right. Wow. So here's a white-tailed deer running away, but this is a female. There are no antlers, and she is a doe. Deer graze on grasses and eat tree leaves, berries, and acorns, among other things. They mostly come out to feed at night when the light is low and they rest during the day. This white-tailed deer has strong, long legs, which are good for running and jumping and for escaping from predators like wolves, coyote, and people. The temperate deciduous forest climate can support many different plants and animals because it has 4 seasons, just like what we have here. It is called temperate because it never gets too cold like the Arctic, and it never gets too hot like the Sonoran Desert. There is a steady rate of rainfall through the year, so plants can grow and animals can have food and water to help keep them alive. This is just one of the many kinds of forests in the world. Next, we're going to take a look at another kind of world. So let me bring up my camera. Hey, hi again. And I just want you to think about all the different things that you have learned about the deciduous temperate rainforest. The temperate deciduous forest in this lesson and the last lesson. And I want you to take a look at this picture. And I want to remind you that if you don't print it out, it's okay. You can copy down this picture in your journal or on a blank piece of paper. And I want you to write some sentences about what you've learned. And when you're writing, it's really important. I need you to do your super best with your capital letters to start sentences and your punctuation to end your sentences, and then all the spelling words that you do know how to spell. So, in our next lesson, like I said, we're going to learn about rainforests, and I'm excited for that. But until then, have a great day, friends.